France 24's reporters have also been able to access zones in Damascus that were once off limits to civilians, as the ground is cleared for the new guard to take the reins. We can now cross to our senior reporter, James Andre. James, I believe that you're at a former government security centre. Would it be fair to call that site a prison of sorts?
Well, look, what I can tell you is that there is an sprawling underground detention complex under these buildings, which are just behind me, and we visited them quite extensively with a local militiaman who was part of al-Sham, and another man whose mother was actually imprisoned for a month in this facility. And what I can tell you is that indeed the conditions were absolutely atrocious. In the building that's right behind me, this one, you can see this place was called the sarcophagus. This was a place where inmates were disciplined. They were basically shut into a 3 square meter room with no windows, just a hole for the air and smaller holes in the doors in the dark, not seeing the light of day for days on end. When you enter these cells, what you realize is the level of despair, with these prisoners having written on the walls, trying to beef the days, trying to imagine the light and day difference from their cells, which was really more than dimly lit. The militiaman we were there with also explained to us what condition he'd found the inmates who were actually staying in these facilities when the HTS forces actually stormed them. As I say, this is one of the most infamous prisons in Damascus. It's called the Palestine prison, and inside, what they found were people who'd been detained in this place for months, for years. He said he'd actually opened the door to a woman who'd been kept in solitary confinement. She was being kept in solitary confinement, but he spent 8 years in this detention center without seeing the light of day. When he opened the door, she actually just cowered in a corner. She said, "No, I've done nothing, just leave me here." And he said, "No, you're free. Bashar al-Assad has fallen." And it took 10 minutes to convince the lady that this was actually true. So you really realize the extent of the violence of this terror system that was put in place by the Bashar al-Assad regime. People being incarcerated on charges of criticizing the government, of so-called terrorism, and who were kept here for a very, very long time.
Some very grim discoveries there then, James. And given that the city is adapting now to a new order coming in, I presume there's optimism, hope for reconciliation, for rebuilding. What's the atmosphere like as far as you've seen and heard from people?
Well, that's what everybody's hoping for, reconciliation and peace. People say we are tired of war, we have had enough. People tell us, you know, this is freedom. Actually being here, you realize the extent of the violence of the repressive system, and you imagine how people would not speak in public, would not say what they thought. One of the stories we were told here was the case of a young woman who was taken and her kids were left in the apartment, and the neighbors would not dare go and help the children because they were fearing of the actual government. So what people are saying here when it comes to, for example, the new prime minister, well, they say, look, we don't really mind who the new prime minister is. One sure thing is that it cannot be worse than what we witnessed before with the Assad regime. This is very much the message that everybody's giving. Obviously, everyone's hopeful. People are telling me, that HTS, that this salvation government, that this newly appointed caretaker prime minister has led up north, has functioned pretty well, and that, well, people are very, very much hopeful, very happy. The celebrations have kind of dimmed down, though, a little bit, especially on the central squares. And what we do see also is much stronger militia presence on the streets in order to make sure that that there is a sense of control, and that there is a sense that things are being controlled inside the city to reassure the people.